In April 2015, global megastar Robert Downey Jr. sat in a London hotel room at the absolute peak of his career. As the face of Marvel's multi-billion-dollar franchise, he was the ultimate symbol of Hollywood redemption. For over a decade, he had successfully managed a pristine, carefully rehearsed comeback narrative. But in a split second, the promotional junket turned hostile. Confronted with a line of invasive questions about his darkest years, his father, and his prison time, the armor cracked. In a dramatic televised moment, he stood up, unclipped his microphone, and walked out, exposing the raw, unresolved trauma beneath his superhero persona. In 1992, 27-year-old Robert Downey Jr. delivered a performance that appeared to cement his status as one of Hollywood's most brilliant young actors. Starring as the title character in Sir Richard Attenborough's biopic Chaplin, he captured the physicality and pathos of the silent film legend so masterfully that he earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. Directors praised his incredible range, studios actively sought his signature, and critics proclaimed him the defining actor of his generation. Yet beneath the glitz of red carpets and Oscar praise, Downey's life was spiraling out of control. A deep-seated addiction to alcohol and hard drugs, a battle that had begun in early childhood, rapidly consumed his personal and professional affairs. By the mid-1990s, his talent was overshadowed by a string of shocking legal troubles. In June 1996, police officers pulled Downey over for speeding along the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu. Inside his pickup truck, authorities discovered black tar heroin, cocaine crack, and an unloaded .357 Magnum handgun. He was arrested, released on bail, and ordered into court-mandated rehabilitation. Less than 3 weeks later, while high on drugs, he wandered into a neighbor's house in Malibu, mistook it for his own home, undressed, and passed out asleep on an 11-year-old boy's bed. 3 days after that incident, he was arrested again after escaping from a court-ordered rehab facility through a bathroom window. For the next 5 years, Downey was trapped in a relentless cycle of arrests, failed drug tests, rehab escapes, and probation violations. Judges attempted to offer him second chances, sending him to specialized treatment centers rather than prison cells. But the addiction was too severe. In August 1999, after repeatedly violating his probation orders, Downey appeared in a Malibu courtroom wearing an orange Los Angeles County Jail jumpsuit. Municipal Court Judge Lawrence Mira informed him that the court's patience was completely exhausted. He sentenced Downey to 3 years at the California Substance Abuse Treatment Facility and State Prison in Corcoran. Handcuffed behind his back, the former Oscar nominee was led away to serve his time. He ultimately spent nearly 15 months behind bars, working in the prison kitchen for 8 cents an hour while wearing standard prison fatigues. Even after his early release in August 2000, the trouble was far from over. Within months, police arrested him in a Palm Springs hotel room surrounded by cocaine and Valium, and again in April 2001 after he was found wandering barefoot in a Culver City alley. By the turn of the century, major Hollywood studios viewed Downey as a toxic financial liability. Insurance companies flatly refused to write completion bonds for any production that cast him. If an actor missed a shooting day or forced a shutdown due to drug relapses, a film crew could lose hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, a financial risk no studio executive was willing to take. Producers locked him out of projects, insurance companies deemed him uninsurable, and the industry wrote him off as another tragic, wasted prodigy whose career was effectively over. From the darkest days in a state prison cell, Downey began to quietly construct a plan to save himself, embarking on a path toward recovery that he would spend years fighting to maintain. In July 2003, Robert Downey Jr. pulled his car into a Burger King drive-thru along the Pacific Coast Highway. He ordered a burger and a soda, sitting alone in the front seat with a trunk full of illegal substances behind him. As he bit into the burger, it tasted so foul that it triggered an immediate wave of disgust, forcing him to confront the grim reality of his declining life. He drove straight down to the ocean, pulled every bag of drugs from his vehicle, and threw them into the Pacific Ocean. That quiet moment on the beach marked his final day, touching illicit substances, setting off a total commitment to rehab programs, therapy, and traditional Wing Chun martial arts. Getting sober was one thing, but rebuilding his Hollywood career required overcoming a massive financial wall. Studio executives still viewed him as an uninsurable risk, flatly refusing to cast an actor who could shut down a multi-million-dollar production with a single relapse. Actor Mel Gibson stepped in during this critical juncture. Believing in Downey's talent and recovery, Gibson personally paid his insurance bond so Downey could star in the 2003 film The Singing Detective. Around that same period, Downey met producer Susan Levin on the set of Gothica. Susan brought strong personal stability and professional focus into his world. When they married in 2005, she set a clear boundary: total sobriety, or the relationship was over. Downey chose complete sobriety. Together with his team, Downey reshaped his public image. Instead of hiding his dark past, he owned his history, presenting his years of addiction and prison time as a completed journey of self-reflection and redemption. He evolved from a dangerous Hollywood warning sign into an inspirational figure of human resilience. The defining moment for this new image came in 2006 when director Jon Favreau fought to cast Downey as billionaire industrialist Tony Stark in Marvel Studios' Iron Man. Paramount Pictures executives resisted the choice, terrified of putting a $140 million flagship project in the hands of a former convict. But Favreau maintained that Downey's real-life struggles, public redemption, and sharp charisma matched the psychological depth of Tony Stark far better than a standard Hollywood lead ever could. Favreau set up a screen test that erased all doubt. Downey brought an energetic, improvised tone to the role, fusing his own redemption journey with Tony Stark's transformation into a hero. When Iron Man hit theaters in May 2008, it shattered box office expectations, grossing over $585 million worldwide and kicking off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Overnight, global audiences and studio executives embraced Downey as the leading figure of blockbuster entertainment, a real-life star who had overcome his darkest years to claim the top spot. Press tours quickly turned into celebrations of his turnaround. Whenever journalists brought up his past legal troubles, Downey responded with quick humor, safely framing his history as a closed chapter. He had successfully turned his hardest years into a clean, inspiring story that resonated with audiences and corporate sponsors worldwide. This polished comeback story served as an ironclad shield protecting his reputation across endless press junkets and public appearances until he walked into a London hotel room to face a journalist who refused to play by the rules. In 2008, as Iron Man conquered the global box office and transformed Robert Downey Jr. into the face of a brand new cinematic universe, journalists scrambled to cover his remarkable comeback. Press junkets were carefully designed to stay on a strict script, celebrating his sobriety, praising his talent, and highlighting Marvel's unprecedented commercial triumph. But during an intimate interview with the New York Times that same year, Downey stepped away from the usual PR playbook and offered a rare, unfiltered glimpse into how his years in prison had radically shifted his worldview. Reflecting on his time behind bars, Downey laid out a sharp observation about personal hardship and political ideology. "I have a really interesting political point of view, and it's not always something I say too loud at dinner tables, but you can't go from a $2,000 a night suite at La Mirage to a 5x8 cell and come out a liberal. You just can't." The quote landed like a sudden jolt in Hollywood circles. Analysts, commentators, and fans began endlessly debating his political leanings. Was the newly crowned blockbuster hero secretly a staunch conservative? Was he repudiating the traditional leanings of the entertainment industry? Media outlets parsed every word, eager to pin a definitive political label on Marvel's biggest star. Yet despite the intense speculation, the controversy never managed to stick or harm his skyrocketing career. The sheer financial muscle of the Marvel franchise provided an impenetrable shield. With Iron Man generating hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office, followed by lucrative sequel deals and ensemble blockbusters, Downey was no longer just an actor looking for work. He was the central pillar of a multi-billion-dollar corporate enterprise. Paramount Pictures, Marvel Studios, and later Disney were heavily invested in keeping his public profile universally appealing. Whenever reporters in subsequent junkets attempted to press him on that 2008 statement or goad him into taking sides on sensitive social topics, Downey masterfully deflated the tension. He relied on his trademark wit, sharp charm, and fast-talking banter to steer every single conversation back to the films, his fellow cast members, and his gratitude for the work. If an interviewer pushed too hard on his personal views, Downey would crack a joke, flash a charismatic smile, and politely pivot, leaving the reporter with an entertaining soundbite that contained zero political risk. Between 2008 and 2014, his financial standing reached legendary heights. Reports revealed that his groundbreaking back-end deal for 2012's The Avengers earned him an estimated $50 million alone, cementing him as the highest-paid actor in Hollywood for 3 consecutive years. That level of star power meant that studio publicists strictly vetted every journalist who sat down with him. Anyone who wanted access to Downey had to agree to stick to the movie at hand. He maintained total control over his narrative, safely insulated from any intrusive questioning about his past, his politics, or his private life. For 6 years, the arrangement worked flawlessly. Marvel churned out record-breaking hits, Downey pocketed historic paychecks, and the press maintained a comfortable, mutually beneficial relationship with Hollywood's favorite reformed bad boy. His carefully guarded perimeter seemed entirely unbreakable. But during the massive global press tour for the next Avengers sequel in 2015, a veteran journalist from Britain's Channel 4 decided to use those exact 2008 quotes to shatter the superstar's defenses once and for all. In April 2015, the global promotional tour for Avengers Age of Ultron was operating like a well-oiled machine. Robert Downey Jr., riding high as the undisputed anchor of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, arrived at a London hotel suite on April 22nd to conduct a series of standard press junket interviews. The schedule was tight, with each broadcast reporter allotted around 7 minutes to ask about the blockbuster, the visual effects, and the star-studded ensemble cast. Downey sat in a plush armchair facing Guru-Murthy, a veteran news anchor for Britain's Channel 4 News. The cameras rolled, and the interview began with routine questions about the movie's scale and Tony Stark's evolving role within the team. But Guru-Murthy had no intention of sticking to the promotional script. A few minutes into the conversation, the reporter abruptly shifted gears. He pulled out the 2008 quote where Downey had linked his time in prison to his changing political views, pressing the actor to clarify whether he still considered himself a liberal or a conservative. Downey's demeanor shifted instantly. His relaxed posture stiffened and his smile vanished. He tried to steer the exchange back on course with a quick, pointed challenge. "Are we promoting a movie?" Guru-Murthy brushed the question aside and pressed even deeper into personal territory. He brought up Downey's troubled past, his years of severe addiction, his complex relationship with his father, Robert Downey Sr., and questioned whether the star felt entirely free from those dark years. The atmosphere in the small hotel room turned icy. Downey shifted uncomfortably in his seat, blinking repeatedly, his eyes darting toward his publicist standing just off camera. He made a quiet effort to politely decline the line of questioning, stating that he couldn't expand on statements he had made years ago to a print journalist. Yet Guru-Murthy refused to yield, asking directly if Downey felt he was clear of his past demons. That was the breaking point. Downey looked at the reporter with a cold, disbelieving stare, nodded calmly, and said, "I'm sorry. What are we doing?" Without waiting for an answer, Downey stood up from his chair. He unclipped the lapel microphone from his jacket, tossed it onto the seat, and began walking toward the exit. As he passed Guru-Murthy on his way out of the suite, he offered one final scathing parting shot. "It's just getting a little Diane Sawyer in here." He walked out the door, leaving the television crew sitting in stunned silence with the cameras still running. The footage captured every second of the interaction, immortalizing the exact moment Hollywood's biggest star drew a hard line against the press, walking away from a high-profile interview to protect his personal boundaries. The video clip of Robert Downey Jr. walking out of the London hotel room spread across the internet within hours of Channel 4 posting it online. Millions of viewers watched the tense 4-minute exchange, sparking an immediate fierce debate over media ethics, celebrity culture, and personal privacy. Journalist Guru-Murthy quickly took to The Guardian to defend his line of questioning. He argued that movie stars should not expect journalists to act as mere mouthpieces for multi-billion-dollar film studios. In his editorial, Guru-Murthy insisted that when an actor is being paid millions of dollars and granted a massive public platform, a serious news organization has every right to ask probing serious questions about their life, past struggles, and political beliefs, rather than serving up softball promotional chatter. However, the public backlash against the journalist was swift and overwhelming. Fans, industry insiders, and fellow entertainment figures rallied behind Downey, accusing Guru-Murthy of ambushing the actor with tabloid-style sensationalism. Critics pointed out that the press junket had been organized specifically to discuss Avengers: Age of Ultron, not to conduct a surprise interrogation into a man's painful past with addiction and family trauma. Online commentators slammed the reporter for trying to farm viral clicks at the expense of a guest who had spent over a decade working to rebuild his life. A few days later, Downey appeared on Howard Stern's radio show to address the viral incident directly. Unapologetic and relaxed, he explained his side of the story without hesitation. He made it clear that he felt zero regret about walking out of the suite, stating that his only mistake was not getting up and leaving even sooner. Downey explained that as a guest on a press tour, he had a professional duty to promote the film and support the team of filmmakers behind it. But he emphasized that he was under no obligation to let a reporter exploit his past wounds for television ratings. He pointed out that Guru-Murthy clearly had a hidden agenda, waiting until the middle of the interview to spring deeply personal, manipulative questions on him once the cameras were rolling. Downey remarked that he was an actor who was there to do a job, not a patient sitting on a therapist's couch, and he had every right to enforce a boundary when someone acted disrespectfully. The standoff marked a significant shift in the balance of power between Hollywood A-listers and traditional media outlets. By walking off set and receiving overwhelming public support, Downey demonstrated that high-profile figures no longer had to endure intrusive bad-faith questioning just to appease television networks. His refusal to be cornered sent a clear signal across the entertainment industry that celebrity access came with mutual respect, and that protection of one's personal dignity was non-negotiable. When Downey returned to the global stage for subsequent press tours, studio publicists enforced even stricter guidelines, and interviewers approached him with a newfound level of professional care. He had drawn a firm line in the sand, successfully protecting the life he had rebuilt and ensuring that his past would never again be used as leverage against him. In April 2019, Avengers Endgame premiered in theaters around the globe, earning over $2.79 billion at the box office and bringing a decade-long saga to an epic conclusion. On screen, Tony Stark made the ultimate sacrifice, snapping his fingers to save the universe and saying his final goodbye. Off-screen, Robert Downey Jr. quietly stepped away from the red suit that had defined his career for 11 years. He was no longer bound to the massive corporate machinery of Marvel Studios, leaving fans and industry executives wondering what direction the world's biggest movie star would take next. Instead of rushing into another studio blockbuster or retreating into passive retirement, Downey turned his focus toward deeply personal artistic choices. In late 2022, he released Senior, a deeply moving documentary produced with his wife Susan for Netflix. The film centered on his late father, underground filmmaker Robert Downey Sr., who was battling Parkinson's disease in his final years. Rather than glossing over the chaotic environment of his youth, Downey faced his childhood head-on. The documentary explored his complex relationship with his father, including the dark reality that his father had introduced him to drugs at a very young age. Yet the project contained no sensationalized victimhood or anger. Instead, Downey used the camera to capture quiet moments of love, reconciliation, and creative connection, sitting alongside his aging father as they edited home videos together. The fairy tale-style narrative of a sudden perfect comeback gave way to a far more mature truth. Recovery and healing were continuous lifelong commitments requiring patience, honesty, and emotional maturity. Freed from the expectations of playing an invincible superhero, Downey searched for roles that would push his acting abilities into raw, uncharted territory. That opportunity arrived when director Christopher Nolan offered him the role of Lewis Strauss, the complex and calculating chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission in the 2023 biographical drama Oppenheimer. Stripping away his familiar quick-witted banter and charismatic swagger, Downey transformed himself into a reserved, aging bureaucrat consumed by political rivalry. He delivered a restrained, intense performance that grounded the 3-hour historical epic. Critics across the globe lauded his performance as a monumental artistic achievement. During the 2024 awards season, Downey swept every major honor in Hollywood, winning the Golden Globe, the Screen Actors Guild Award, and the BAFTA for Best Supporting Actor. The culmination of his journey came on March 10, 2024, at the 96th Academy Awards. When his name was announced as the Oscar winner for Best Supporting Actor, the entire room of Hollywood peers rose to their feet in a thunderous standing ovation. Over 3 decades after his first Oscar nomination for Chaplin in 1993 and 25 years after sitting in a California state prison cell, Robert Downey Jr. walked up the steps of the Dolby Theater stage to accept the highest honor in cinema. He held the gold statuette, smiled with quiet confidence, and delivered a speech filled with warmth, sharp humor, and profound gratitude to his wife Susan, his team, and the art of acting. He stood on that stage not as a corporate product or a managed redemption brand, but as a fully realized artist who had conquered his past, mastered his craft, and earned total creative freedom on his own terms.